Hey everyone, Brian here, and in today's lesson we're going to explore some of the major economic activities which occur in Latin America and look at a small sample of the diverse market structures which exist there. So, let's talk about money. Economics. With a vast area covering so many different peoples and political traditions, the economies of Latin America are just as diverse as its people. However, a colonial past and contemporary struggles have kept some advances away from many places in Central and South America and the Caribbean. Agriculture. With such political topics as farmers' rights, land reform, deforestation, and a historical legacy of slavery, you can probably guess that agriculture still plays an incredibly important role within the economic systems of Latin America. And you'd be right. Just the same, Latin America has always been known for crops that aren't just for general consumption, but rather for money making, which are also called cash crops. For example, Brazil is far and away the largest coffee producer in the world, having produced over 44 million bags of coffee in 2020. To give you an idea of the scale of that measurement, each bag of coffee weighs about 132 pounds. So, if we take 132 pounds of coffee and multiply that by 44 million, you get about 5.7 billion pounds of coffee beans. Brazil's coffee harvest accounts for almost 5% of the country's total agricultural output. Added to that, the countries of Honduras, Mexico, Colombia, Guatemala, Peru, and Nicaragua are also in the top 12 coffee-growing countries in the world. In addition to that, Brazil and Ecuador are 4th and 5th in global banana production, with a combined output of over 13 million tons in 2017. And we couldn't talk about non-traditional food crops without talking about sugarcane, the powerhouse of Brazilian plantation and business agriculture. Brazil remains by far the largest producer of sugarcane in the world. In 2019, Brazil produced an estimated 752 million tons of sugarcane, representing a little under 39% of global sugarcane production. As important as cash crops are, subsistence farming, or farming enough for your own family or community, is still a way of life for many. The estimated percentage of small family farms throughout Latin America varies widely, but some estimates put it up to 50%, or half of those engaged in farming do so primarily for themselves. The challenge of subsistence farming in Central America, Venezuela, Colombia, and others have been access to seeds, either naturally occurring or those which have been modified to be pesticide resistant, allowing farmers to spray chemicals on their crops. With natural seeds, many are less productive than those altered for pesticides, but the modified seeds are much higher in cost and have to be bought yearly, as the modified seeds are also altered to only be used once. This lack of natural productive seeds and prohibitive cost of modified seeds has become one of the push factors in Central America, motivating immigration to the United States for the last 20 years. Mining. Mining remains an important industry in Latin America. Gold and silver, which first pushed the European conquistadors to these areas 500 years ago, are still pulled from the ground today in Mexico, Peru, Brazil, Bolivia, and Chile. In fact, these 5 countries account for about 50% of the world's silver and about 20% of the world's gold. Copper, an incredibly important, malleable metal heavily used for electrical conduction and construction, is mined heavily in Chile and Peru. As a measure of its importance, almost 60% of Peru's exports to other countries are mined metals such as gold, silver, copper, tin, and zinc. The second largest global producer of iron ore, a critical component of steel, is Brazil, with about 4.8 million tons in 2019, putting its production only behind China. Modern diversification. Some automation and technological improvement have come to Latin America, specifically in the agriculture and automobile industries. In Brazil, Volkswagen, Ford, Chevrolet, Toyota, Hyundai, Renault, Mitsubishi, Mercedes-Benz, and others all have at least one and often multiple factories in the country. Most, if not all of these factories are run by automation, that is, computers and robots. While robot-driven factories do cut down on employment opportunities, they also provide a necessary boost for high-skilled labor in the region, although it also means fewer workers overall. In addition, many countries have attempted to make an effort to halt or limit the clear-cutting of rainforest and the destruction of natural resources. There are many multi-country partnerships which fund projects that help to conserve the flora and fauna of Latin America while providing benefits for people to keep that preservation alive, such as the Latin America Conservation Council, the United Nations Program on Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation, as well as multiple ecotourism companies which create trips for tourists with minimal environmental impact. The future of these is always uncertain, and the Bolsonaro administration of Brazil has recently made cutbacks to protected areas in the rainforest, including the vow to open most of the Amazon River basin up for industrial development. As we've already seen, the great reliance that Latin America has on agricultural products, the nutrient destruction and environmental collapse which may come from deforestation, cannot be ignored. Types of economies. As diverse as production is in Latin America, the manner in which people organize their economies span all of the basic types of economic systems, and all in one region. Market economy, Mexico. Mexico is a market economy, or an economy based on trade and open competition with strong government protections. Of the market economies in Latin America, Mexico is the largest. While hit hard by the economic recession of 2008, its GDP, or gross domestic product, is over $1 trillion per year. Mexico has a strong industrial and technology sector linked to the United States and Canadian markets through the long-standing free trade agreement shared by the three. Command economy, Cuba. While many countries in Latin America have some form of government control on production, none is as complete as Cuba. As a nation, the vast majority of industry is controlled and regulated by the state, with people working for the state in a particular industry, which is the very definition of a command economy. There is a bit of an exception being made after the death of President Fidel Castro in 2011, when his brother Raul and the Central Committee, or governing body, began to allow for a few licenses for private business in an effort to spur the economy and assist in bringing tourists to the island. Communist Cuba has been under large sanctions or limits on their ability to trade since the revolution, and the government has signaled its hope to have some of those sanctions lifted through the gradual opening of their economy. Mixed economy, Brazil. To add a bit of a new term, Brazil is a mixed economy, meaning that there is some industry which is owned or controlled by the state, and some which is owned or controlled by private enterprise. In Brazil's case, there are multiple government controls and interventions in mining, agriculture, and energy production, while allowing for private business to run parts of these, as well as banking and the service industry. Brazil is the largest economy by GDP in all of Latin America, coming in at a little over $3 trillion in 2021. Traditional economy, everywhere. While no Latin American nation is officially classified as a traditional economy, or an economic system based upon family or group need rather than producing goods for profit, millions throughout the region do not have the means to interact in the formal economic system of their state due to poverty, monetary insecurity, or a lack of connection to a market. This can be due to regional disconnect, as for many farmers through Central America and the Amazon River basin, or due to a country's economic mismanagement, as with Venezuela, where the economy, greatly dependent upon oil exports, collapsed in 2013 and still has yet to recover. In those extreme circumstances, people often rely on trade or barter to get by. And even with this barter system, many people in Latin America are dependent upon remittances, or money sent by a friend or family member working in another country just to survive. Globally, it is estimated that 720 billion US dollars were remitted in 2020, with 42 billion of that money going to Mexico alone. People who are dependent upon remittances can also feel the pressure of another country's economy taking a hit due to an emergency or, in 2020, a global pandemic. For example, in 2021, the country of Honduras saw remittances fall almost $50 million month over month in the summer of 2021. The myriad of ways in which goods and services are created, moved, and used is among the most important concepts for a geographer to understand about an area. It doesn't just inform us of what is important to a people for survival and growth, but additionally it gives insight into wealth, inequality, and attitude of a country toward the world and its place in it. Until next time, keep exploring. Hey, hey.